This is the Louie T Network.
Who else could it be but me, your me, Louie T? Welcome to lockdown coverage week number 9 in the National Football League. Colts and Texans getting a little interesting here. 7 seconds left, 3rd and goal. Texans with the football at the 7, looking to tie the game up with a touchdown and win it possibly with an extra point. Tom Savage trying to lead a comeback. In any event, I'm here to talk about Broncos and Eagles. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I wish I would have known they were going to switch to this game and it was this close down the wire. I would have waited to start this video. But in any event, I mean, you're not hard-pressed for this. This is an ass whooping here, okay? Eagles took it to the Denver Broncos, jumped on them early, jumped on them often. And the Eagles right now, and I've talked about this on a number of different occasions. I've talked about this alluding to a power rankings, how no team has really separated themselves. Well, the Eagles are starting to separate themselves now. Granted, I will say this. The Eagles haven't played a lot of good teams this year. I mean, if you look at the list of teams that they've played this season, I don't know if there are any teams on that list outside of Kansas City. They're one loss with a winning record. I mean, I'm trying to think. I know they beat the Giants. They beat the Redskins twice. All those teams have losing records. They beat the Chargers. That's a losing record team. The 49ers, that's a losing record team. That's 5 wins right there. The Broncos today, that's 6. That's a losing record team. So now that's 6 wins there. I'm trying to think of the 7th win. I can't think of who that was, but obviously they haven't played the best competition this season. They feasted on lower level competition. In Arizona, I think, is the 7th team. So they haven't beat a winning record team yet this season. So just kind of keep that in perspective. This is not a Eagles team that has just gone out and crushed all competition, including teams with winning record. The one team they played with a winning record, they lost to. But that's nor here nor there. You can only beat up who they put in front of you, right? And they've put 8 opponents in front of these Eagles, 9 opponents in front of these Eagles now, and they've disposed of each and every single one of them, except for the one team that, like I said before, has a winning record, that being the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's the way they're doing it that's so impressive. We've seen teams, and this is the last play of the game here in that Indy-Houston game, so if you would just give me a second, I apologize a great deal, but I cannot help but watch this final play. 2 seconds. Texans from the 7-yard line, 4th and goal. This is for the game. I just want to see what happens to wrap this thing up. Okay, Savage is hit. The ball comes loose, and the Colts are going to hold on and win that game 20-14. So the first game without Watson, the Texans aren't able to get it done at home, and Tom Savage continues to show why he's Tom Savage. In any event, it's been the way the Eagles have dominated this season that has been so impressive for people like myself who are beginning to believe in this Eagles team. Don't mind the Eagles fans. They've been telling you that this team has been good since like week 4. It's the people like myself who are NFC East fans who are watching from afar that are starting to really buy into what the Eagles are selling. But again, I still have my little bit of doubt. I have my caveat because, again, the Eagles haven't played anybody of note this season for the most part. And they've got a pretty soft schedule and have played a pretty soft schedule. And like I said, the thing that has been the most impressive and why they're starting to win me over is because they're disposing. They're not playing around with these garbage teams. They're not playing around with the likes of the Arizona Cardinals, the San Francisco 49ers, the Denver Broncos. They're not playing around with those teams. They're at home. They're supposed to beat them, and they're drubbing these teams. They're destroying these teams, and they're making sure that these teams don't think that they have a shot to come into Philly and win. And then they're going on the road, and they're finding ways to win against teams like the Redskins, like the Chargers. These are not easy teams to beat despite their sub-500 records. Those are tough wins on the road, and the Eagles have been able to go out and get those. So they've been equally as impressive on the road as they have been at home. So I think Carson Wentz and his MVP candidacy continues to strengthen week in and week out with performances like the one we saw today. They make the trade for Jay Ajayi. He has like a 44-yard touchdown run in the first half of the game. They dominated in every facet of this game, did the Eagles, special teams, defense, offense. Picked off Brock Osweiler deep in Broncos territory, leading to a Eagles touchdown. And that really helped them separate from the Broncos early in this ball game. And the Eagles have done a great job this season of jumping out on top of teams in the first quarter. I think the number now, I saw a stat, I think it's 62-17. The Eagles have outscored their opponents in the first quarter. And like I said, that's the Arizona Cardinals game. That's this game here. That's a number of different games where you look at and they jumped on top of their opponent, especially inferior ones, and let them know that it's not happening. It's not that type of party today. You will not think you have a shot. By the time we get to halftime, you'll know that you don't have a shot in this football game. And that's what good football teams do. And the Eagles have started to distance themselves from the rest of the NFC. A lot of the NFC teams are kind of middle of the pack, fiddling around at 6-3, 5-3, 4-4, middle of pack type of, and the Eagles have just separated themselves with another win, now at 8-1 on the season after this utter destruction of the Denver Broncos. And this was impressive, like I said, because we expected this. And sometimes the hardest victories to get as a football team are the ones when you're expected to go out and destroy a team. There aren't many teams that go out and play at their level and doesn't stoop to the level of their competition. We see the Steelers, who we think is a really good football team. We see them stoop down to the level of their competition all the time. One of the few teams that don't do that is the New England Patriots. They're one of the exceptions to the rule. When they're really good and you expect them to go out and beat a team by 20, they go out and beat a team by 20. This Eagles team, we're starting to expect them to go out and drub teams, and they're going out and doing exactly that. And that's very impressive. And they did it again in this game. Wentz was outstanding. You got contributions from, I thought, what you got out of Burton in this game was huge because no Zach Ertz. They scratched him after not liking how he looked in warmups. And you have Burton come in there, and he was outstanding in this game. Trey Burton was killing the Denver Broncos from the first drive into the halftime break. I mean, he had a number of big catches, and it was him and the run game and Wentz's ability to escape. I also thought that you got a great contribution out of your rookie back out of Wisconsin. He also, to me, did some good things, Corey Clement. And so it was a total team effort. Jai with a nice run, Clement with a nice touchdown run and a touchdown grab, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely, I remember the screen for sure. But this Eagle, I think he caught 2 touchdown grabs, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, I was right. It wasn't a run. It was on a read option, and Wentz tossed it to him, and he was able to get to the corner, get to the edge. So I just thought it was an all-around effort, and they continue to show how many weapons that they have on the offensive side of football. I don't think any of their weapons are dominant outside of Zach Ertz, but of course, Wentz, the trigger man, is an elite weapon in himself. But I'm talking about the skill guys. I don't think there's any one weapon that is elite. However, when you look at, the totality of what they have in Philadelphia, Ertz to me is an elite weapon. Wentz is an elite weapon. Everyone else are complementary pieces, but Wentz takes everyone's game to that next level, and that's what makes them so scary and dangerous. In Philadelphia offensively. Defensively, they stopped the run, which they pretty much did it again in this game, and they forced you to beat them through the air. And you would think that you would have a little bit more success against them because their secondary isn't that great. And you saw glimpses of the Broncos being able to take advantage of a okay Eagles secondary, but, I mean, they still get after your quarterback. They stop the run. They make you uncomfortable, and then they put you in third and long situations, and it's tough to complete those on a consistent basis. And so this is an Eagles team right now that They're gaining confidence as the weeks go on, and that's a dangerous thing. I don't care who the competition is. They could get fat off of a bunch of bad teams, but by the time they get to the good teams, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start believing that they should win those games because of the confidence they've built throughout the first 9 weeks of the season. So this is a scary proposition for the rest of the NFC and hell, for the rest of the league, if the Eagles continue on the path that they're on right now, because they're gaining confidence as the weeks go by. They're beating up teams, and they're beating them handily, and they're believing that we're supposed to win. And the only thing, and I said this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, the only thing that they're missing on their resume as of right now is a come-from-behind victory. That's the one thing that they need to then have the ultimate confidence that it doesn't matter what the score is, we can come back and win the football game. And so if they can just get in one situation where they're down like 10 with 6 minutes left in the ball game, Wentz takes them on a scoring drive to cut it to a 3-point score. The defense gets the stop. Wentz gets the football back, takes them on another drive, and they score a touchdown, and they win the game by 4. They're going to believe. Doesn't matter if we're down. Doesn't matter if the opponent is inferior. It doesn't matter if the opponent is good. We're supposed to win, and even if we get down, we can come back and win. We're never out of a ball game. If they can get one of those victories under their belt, this is going to be a scary Philadelphia Eagles team. More scarier than they already are as they destroy the Denver Broncos today. Last time I checked, it was 51-23. You go to the Denver Broncos side of things quickly. They're in disarray. This reminds me a lot of last year where they started out quick out of the gates because the defense was really good and they were able to surprise some teams with just how good their defense was. You know, the first 3 or 4 weeks, the offense is trying to catch up to the defenses that are usually out ahead of the offenses because of, you know, training camp and not really getting into that offensive rhythm. You're holding out guys because you don't want anybody to get hurt before the season starts. And so the defense is usually out ahead of the offense, and Denver usually is one of the biggest beneficiaries of that year in and year out with their dominant defense. And we saw it again this year. They start out fast, and they haven't won a game since starting 3-0 on the season. And I think they started 3-0, maybe even 2-1, but it's been rough for the Denver Broncos. They started out the season 2-1. Then they beat the Oakland Raiders after coming back home, losing to Buffalo. Haven't won a game since that win in Week 4 versus the Oakland Raiders, and they've struggled. They've struggled mightily, have the Denver Broncos. I don't see it getting any better for them because they don't have a quarterback. And I remember a lot of people saying their quarterback situation was really bad in Denver, and I said, no, they got Trevor Siemian. You guys are sleeping on Siemian. He's all right. You'll find out. And he's not all right. And Brock Osweiler got the start today, and he showed why he's Brock Osweiler, and he wasn't good today. And they're banged up. E-Man Sand left the game, came back in. They just don't have it offensively. And now it's affecting the defense. The Eagles did whatever they wanted to do offensively versus this vaunted Denver Broncos defense. They ran it, which the Broncos came into the game with the #1 run defense in the league. Well, you couldn't tell watching this game because they ran it very effectively. Jay Ajayi had a 44-yard touchdown run. Corey Clement had some good runs in there. Blunt had a couple of nice runs. They ran the football. Wentz used his legs when he had to. They were able to throw it. The no-fly zone, couldn't tell. Looked like the Eagles were directing air traffic all over that Denver Broncos defense in that secondary, and they were throwing it all over the place. Whether it was Alshon Jeffrey catching one on a fake read option throw by Wentz, or it was Corey Clement catching a screen, or it was Trey Burton catching a back shoulder fade right by the pylon on Brandon Marshall getting into the end zone. It didn't really matter in this game. It did not matter. The Eagles did what they wanted to do, you know, and so the defense is being affected by the offense's inability to sustain offense and not turn it over, and they're starting to now see their production wane and be affected by the lack of production on offense. And you hear the statement that we're not divisive in our locker room and we're not blaming the offense. We got to go out and play better. It sounds good, but it takes a toll on a defense when every time you look up, you're being put in some tough spots. Every time you turn around, you're back on the field, sudden change possession. You got to protect 13 yards of real estate, or the other team's getting in for a touchdown like the Eagles had after picking off Osweiler early in the second quarter. It's those types of plays that really back you into a corner as a defense. And at some point, the dam breaks, and it broke in this game, and they give up a ton of points as the Eagles are able to. And this is going to be an ongoing problem for the Broncos for the remainder of the year because they don't have an answer at quarterback. The one thing I can say, the silver lining in the cloud that is the Denver Broncos organization is that, hey, you got a Super Bowl out of this run, which most teams aren't able to say they're able to get out of this kind of dominance on the defensive side of football. But that's going to come to an end soon. And then you're going to be a mediocre team, but at least you were able to get a Super Bowl out of your dominant defense. And it's a shame because maybe you could have gotten back there. Maybe you could have won another one. Maybe you could have had multiple opportunities and cracks at winning a chip had you had, say, a Russell Wilson at quarterback. Because it's the same blueprint in Seattle. Dominant defense, run the football with a mobile quarterback that gives you an opportunity. You'll make it to the playoffs every year and have a shot. And if the Broncos had something similar, they'd have a shot every year because the defense is good every year. But unfortunately for them, their quarterbacking situation has went south in a hurry, and it's going to not only affect them this year, but really moving forward. Because for all the praise that we give John Elway, and rightfully so, he's botched this quarterbacking situation. Paxton Lynch must not be the guy because they refused to play him. Brock Osweiler coming back wasn't the right move there. And Trevor Siemian, who I really like and I thought would play better, has really been disappointing. So we'll see what happens. And in any event, Eagles, 8-1. My goodness, dominant performance. You've got to be absolutely impressed with what they've done over the first 9 weeks of the season. Best record in the NFL, will remain that way despite what any other team does in Week 9. They can't catch the Eagles' 8-1 mark. And so this Eagles football team has been extraordinary to start the season off. And this is another dominant performance by what looks to be the best team in the NFC right now in the Philadelphia Eagles. They dominate the Denver Broncos, and I'm assuming the score, it might have ended up 51-23. Maybe the Broncos scored late. Maybe the Eagles tacked on a little something late. But in any event, let's get to your comments quickly. I'll answer a few and then move on. Alex says, I don't want to hear that they haven't played any good teams. It's true. I mean, you can say what you want. Obviously, you don't want to hear that because you're an Eagles fan. But I remember being a Redskins fan, and the narrative was Redskins haven't played any good teams. And when we did play good teams, we would lose. And you didn't want to hear it as a Redskins fan, but it was facts. And I know you're gonna say Washington was a good team when we played. No, we weren't a good team. We were 0-0 when you played us. We didn't know what to expect. The second time you played us, we were 3-3, and we still didn't. We were 3-2, and we didn't know what to expect because we had so many injuries. Matter of fact, the second time we saw you, it wasn't the same team you saw in Week 1 because of all the injuries. So I'd argue with you. You haven't played anybody good except Kansas City, and I think you played on one more good team. I think I'm missing somebody. Carolina, you just named it. Carolina was a good team. Absolutely. Can't take that one away from you. That was on the road. That was impressive. But if you look at Carolina, look at what they've done. They're 6-3, but it's the most unimpressive 6-3 that you've ever seen. I mean, that's not a team that you expect to do big things. I still don't think the Panthers are going to make the playoffs necessarily. Just looking at the way they perform, their offense is anemic. I don't know if I'm buying what the Panthers are selling. So while that was a good win, I'm not going to take that away from you. On the road, on a Thursday night against a Panthers team that at that time was playing good football, that was a tremendous win by the Eagles. But again, you've played the vast majority of your wins this season. Of your 8 wins, 7 of them have come against teams that are right now sporting a sub 500 record. So it is what it is. Carolina says, Eagle Speed says, Carolina was 4-1 when we beat them, and they have a winning record now. Yeah, I just mentioned that. Let's see. Alex says, we were tied with the Chiefs in the fourth quarter. Before a fluky Wentz turnover got Kansas City going. It is what it is. Those happen. Flukes, not flukes. It is what it is. You ended up losing that game by a touchdown. You were down 14 late in that game, scored a touchdown, had a chance to throw a Hail Mary at the end to try to tie it. But bottom line is you went in there and you lost to Kansas City, and that's a good team in Kansas City. So it is what it is. Alex says, Trey Burton is a poor man's Jordan Reed. very, very destitute Jordan Reed. But in any event, very athletic, skilled tight end that can catch the football for sure. K. Michael says, based on how bad the Broncos quarterback position is this year, is it safe to say Elway will be backing up the Brinks truck for Cousins in 2018? It's possible. He didn't want to back up the Brinks truck for Brock Osweiler, and so we'll see what happens. But they're going to be in the running for Kirk Cousins if he's available in 2018 in the offseason for sure, because they're a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contending team for sure. K. Michael says, who has done a better job coaching this season, Peterson or McVay? I'd have to go with McVay just because he had to go in and change the entire culture of the Rams. That was a losing franchise. The Eagles, they haven't won in a while, but it hasn't been that long since they've won. You got to think about it. The Rams haven't been to the postseason since what? I can't tell you. 2005 maybe, the greatest show on turf at the end of their run. Jeff Fisher never took them to the playoffs, so I can't recall the last time the Rams made it to the postseason. So that was a losing culture there. There was a lot going on there. Whereas the Eagles, they won a division under Chip Kelly, believe it or not. So it hasn't been that long since they've made it to the postseason, and you can see them trending in the right direction. McVay had to go in and change the whole culture, and that's both of them have been impressive though. Peterson and McVay, and what they've done this season has been impressive. But I'd have to say that the most impressive coaching job this season has to go to McVay thus far. Cloud says, Dolphins fans, we thought we lost this trade. No, I don't know. That's, when guys get traded, we saw it with the Panthers fans all coming out and basically trying to blast Kelvin Benjamin now all of a sudden because he's not a Panther. Teams do this. Fans of teams do this when they trade away a player. They try to rationalize and justify it. I've seen the Panthers do this multiple times when they got rid of Steve Smith, and even when they got rid of D'Angelo Williams, they tried to rationalize it and justify the moves, which didn't have any rationale for it. And so you see it all the time. But it's still early to decide who got the better of the trade. But you got to love what the Eagles are doing right now. Cloud says, a couple of ass whoopings happened today. Rams are legit. Rams been legit. I told you the Rams were legit. When they went to Dallas and won earlier in the season, that showed me that they were legit right there. I don't know. I still don't think they're going to win the division. I still think that goes to Seattle, but we'll see. Thomas S. says, do you think the Eagles are Super Bowl contenders? Absolutely do. Kevin says, Eagles and Rams both demolished their teammates. Reby says, I like that quote, directing air traffic. I loved, especially against that so-called number one defense. All our defensive players have been noted to say that we think we are the number one defense. They're playing outstanding football. I can tell you that much. That Eagles defense, I expected teams to be able to throw it a lot better than they have this season against the Eagles, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I've been really impressed with that Eagles defense, especially up front. I said they probably got the most talented front four in the league. The most talented front seven goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Eagles front four, man, it's a dominant group. And you see it in the run game and even getting after opposing quarterbacks. So Michael Thompson says, Panthers taking the South, considering we aren't playing our best, but we're still racking up wins. Greg Olsen is coming back. I think the Saints are the team that I think they've already went to Carolina and won. Carolina doesn't have a problem going back to New Orleans and getting one back, but I don't feel this Panthers football team. I don't. I still haven't watched the game. I want to see what happened. But I know they were down 10-0, and right before the half, it went to 14. I'm assuming Matt Ryan threw a pick after the Panthers scored a touchdown, threw a pick, and they got the football right back, scored again, and they took the lead, and they never relinquished it in that game. But their offense is ugly. It's a lot of Cam Newton running the football, which reminds me of about 3 years ago when this team struggled to produce offense, and he was the offense. It looks a lot like that 2014 Panthers team that should not have made the playoffs, but the division was so bad that they won the division, got in, beat the Arizona Cardinals in the first week, and then promptly was disposed of the next round. That looks a lot like this team, but again, we'll talk about that when we get to the Panthers. Reby says, predicted 10-1 remotely, looking at a possible loss, and I agree. If we go 10-1, we'll have the confidence to win those. Every week people say this team will give them fits. Well, I didn't get the rest of your comment, Reeby. But in any event, Eagles dominate. I'm going to go with 51-23. I don't know if that's what the final score ended up being, but total ass whooping by the Eagles dished out to the Denver Broncos. The Broncos never stood a chance in this game. I was so impressed with their ability to move the football against this Broncos defense. I don't think this Broncos defense is as good as it used to be, but still, this is a respectable Broncos defense, and they looked anything but against this high-powered machine known as the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And they showed again today why Carson Wentz is among the top candidates for MVP, and they showed again why they're the best team statistically record-wise in the league at 8-1 with a 51-23 destruction of the Denver Broncos. Eagles 8-1 after the win. Broncos now 3-5, I believe, after this loss. So we'll see what happens with this Denver football team. I don't think there's an answer on the roster at quarterback, and that's going to really hamstring them for the remainder of the season. But nonetheless, the Eagles continue to fly high. Fly, Eagles, fly. As they do exactly that in this game, 51-23 over the Denver Broncos. That's going to do it for your man Louie T here on Lockdown Coverage. I've got 2 more breakdowns coming at the end of the 4 o'clock games. Dallas Cowboys, Kansas City Chiefs, Redskins, Seahawks. I'll see you for both of those at the conclusion of those games. Enjoy the 4 o'clock games. I'll see you after. Have a good one.